Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Hey everybody, it's your old pal Sawtooth Frank, coming to you on the Soft Serve podcast. This is our second show we are doing in 2026. We're off to a good start. I think in 2025, at this point in the year, we had 0 shows. So that's an improvement. We're still trying to figure out some things, like when we're going to get Stomping Jen back on the show, how often I'm going to do episodes, when I'm doing them alone or with Stomping Jen, etc., etc. So anyways, for this week's episode, I'm going to read you a story that I wrote. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that story after the intro music.
The Soft Serve Podcast.
You're a loser, a scumbag, lower than scum. You are a absolute zero. Lower than scum. A scumbag.
Absolute zero. Yeah, all by myself.
Lower than scum.
All alone.
A scumbag.
Yeah, scumbag.
Zero.
Alright, yeah. Well, it's just me this week. I gotta tell you, I am still not entirely used to doing these shows by myself, my dear listeners. I don't know, this is my 8th or 9th attempt at doing a solo show, and well, I think I'm getting more comfortable with it. I definitely don't have sort of the confidence I feel I have when I have a co-host sitting across from me. Specifically, a Stomping Jen co-host.
I don't want to be an immortal lobster.
So it's a big shift for me. Anyways, I'm in active negotiations with Stomping Jen for her return to the show. We'll have to see if we can get her on here. I'm not going to make any predictions. I'm trying. And you know, this is a risk of taking a break, I think, for so long, and losing the momentum of doing a weekly show, right? As the wind goes out of the sails. And, you know, I can't blame her. I absolutely felt that myself when I took the time off, but you know, as she likes to say, this was sort of my passion project. Podcasting has always been sort of my passion project, and it was difficult for me to jump back right into it. So I'm talking with Stomping Jen. I'm hoping at some point she'll want to return, my dear listeners, and talk to you and me together, but we'll see. So for this show, I mostly am planning on reading you a short story that I wrote. But, you know, before I launch into this short story or tell you about it, I feel compelled to make a comment about stuff that's going on nationally with our country. Specifically, if you're paying attention to the news, and honestly, I don't blame you if you're not paying attention to the news, you should be aware of the woman who was shot and killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis a few days ago. I am recording this on January 12th, and the woman who was killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis, her name was Renee Nicole Good. She was 37 years old, and I know many of us have seen the videos circulating online. And it's clear to me from the multiple videos that were shot from multiple angles, including a video shot by the ICE officer who killed this woman, that this woman, Renee Nicole Good, was just trying to drive away from the ICE officers and the scene that she found herself in. She was at this particular location that the ICE agents were at because my understanding is she was there to support the community and her neighbors who were being targeted by ICE. And, if you watch the videos, again, especially telling is the one shot by the ICE agent himself. This woman, Renee, is looking out the window at the ICE agent, and she says to him, "I'm not even mad at you." And then she attempts to drive away, and the ICE agent fires 3 bullets into the car with his service pistol. After he fires, someone can be heard calling her a fucking bitch. As of this recording, it has not been confirmed who actually said this, whether it was the officer who fired the gun or somebody else standing nearby. Now, the narrative being put out by the Trump administration is that this woman, Renee Nicole Good, was a domestic terrorist. And I don't see, looking at the video evidence, how any rational person could conclude this woman was a domestic terrorist or attempting to run over this ICE agent. The words uttered after the shooting tell us everything we need to know about what these officers on the scene who killed Renee Good were thinking. They pumped 3 bullets into her, and someone called her a fucking bitch. Think about that for a minute. Right after they shot her to death, which I think tells us what is in the hearts and the minds of the ICE agents who did that to her. Hatred. They despised this woman. Again, we don't know who said the words, but in all likelihood, it was one of the ICE agents who were on the scene at the killing of Renee Good. And it may even be the agent who shot her. And it's my opinion, based on the evidence I've seen, that this officer was not defending himself, and that he fired his gun into that car because he was angry, and he did it with hatred in his heart. I think this is a very, very sad and frightening time we live in, where federal agents, for any reason at all, can justify gunning down people in the street without any due process. And this is exactly what we're hearing, pardon me, out of the Trump administration, is justification for this killing. Again, I think the video evidence shows this woman was just trying to drive away. Minnesota police guidelines, ICE's own guidelines, say in a situation like this that an officer should de-escalate and not use lethal force. And I think, I say we're in a very sad and chilling moment because, like I said, we have all seen the videos and we see what our eyes are telling us. But the government, in my opinion, is blatantly lying about what we all can see with our own eyes. And this is reminiscent of George Orwell's 1984. You know, the book that we all had to read in high school about Big Brother, and Big Brother is watching you, and complying with the party, right? And there's a line in 1984 that I think applies to this situation in the killing of Renee Nicole Good. That line reads the following: "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." We have our own government, the Trump administration, telling us all that what we are seeing with our own eyes is not what we're actually seeing, commanding us to reject what our eyes and ears are telling us. And I can't tell you how disturbing it has been for me to be online and seeing the human beings and bots propagating the command from the Trump party that what we're seeing with our own eyes and ears is not what we are actually seeing. And believe it or not, this leads me to my story that I'm going to read for you. I wrote this story back in, I think, 2019. I believe it was October of 2019, before the pandemic had hit us. Now, for longtime listeners of the podcast, you will know that in January of 2020, I quit drinking alcohol. The reason I did that, as I've discussed on this podcast over the years, is I feel my drinking was reaching problem proportions. I was thinking about alcohol all of the time. My alcohol consumption was triggering my anxious thinking. It was making me paranoid about my relationships with people and work and just life in general. And a big part of that paranoia, I think, was engaging with social media and having trouble sort of seeing what was real and what wasn't. And so, before I quit drinking, I was struggling with all of these things. And I decided I was going to try to work it out by writing a poem or a story. I believe I said to you a couple of episodes ago, for me, the line between a poem and a story is kind of blurry. I'm not I would say, somebody who knows a lot about forms of literature, forms of poetry. I'm not a real poet. I'm not a real writer, in the sense that I'm a scholar of any form of writing. I just sort of sit down and put stuff on a page, and sometimes it looks like a poem. Sometimes it looks like what you might think a short story looks like, right? I'm going to take another sip of tea. Just bear with me. Okay, and so that's how this story came about. It's really, for me, was an exploration of social media and my anxiety about a whole host of things. Some of those things I just told you about. And I say that this connects back to the Renee Nicole Good killing by ICE agents in Minneapolis, because in the aftermath of her killing, I can see so clearly how social media is distorting what I see as the truth, what my own eyes and ears are telling me from multiple sources of verifiable information. And I've seen over the last 6 years since writing this poem, or starting to write this poem, that this problem of social media distorting things has gotten worse. We've all heard of AI slop. That's the AI-generated content that's filling up our Instagram feeds and our Facebook feeds. You know the ones. There'll be a woman, for example, standing on a porch, holding her child, and then a grizzly bear comes running out of the woods and crashes into her and sends her hurtling through the front door. Right? Lots of this clearly fake, sensational garbage, or slop, as it's been come to be known now, just filling our feeds in our minds. And it's, I think, contributing to this problem of not knowing what is evidence, what is real, not knowing what your eyes and ears can trust, and sort of conversely making it easy to accept lies and distortions from people who hold the mantle of power and authority in this country. So we have a population who, because of social media and the content that's being produced on it now, in my opinion, are increasingly unable to tell the difference between what's real and what isn't real, and are all too eager to latch on to anything that people in authority tell them. No matter how bad the intentions of people in authority are. And if you listen to this podcast, it will be no surprise to you that I think the Trump administration has bad intentions for all of us, for citizens, naturalized and otherwise, for people who are in a immigration status, legal or otherwise. I don't think the Trump administration has our best interests in mind. And I'm worried about the effect social media is having on us all to be able to tell the difference between right and wrong and discern truth from fiction. Anyways, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I'm struggling this week with all of this, and just how, again, deeply and profoundly disturbed I am by the extrajudicial killing of this poor woman, Renee Nicole Good. Right? And don't let these fucking people twist your mind. Even in the event that she was driving her car a little too close to the officer, or something else, it doesn't mean she deserves to be shot dead on the spot without any kind of due process in the legal system. Right? And this is what the Trump administration is trying to normalize and get you to accept. They want you to believe that based on the perception of anybody who works for them, be it ICE agents, the military now, anybody else, if you're somebody perceived as being against the Trump administration, then they are justified in killing you, shooting you in the face 3 times, and then telling everybody and lying to people that you were a domestic terrorist. And that not only did you not deserve the benefit of being arrested, having a court proceeding judged by a jury of your peers, and a sentencing by a judge, they want you to accept The Trump administration wants you to accept that it's perfectly reasonable for anybody who works for them to take your life on the spot. Okay. I think I've gone on long enough about that. And I, again, felt a need to talk to you about that and how it connects to this particular piece of writing I'm going to read to you now. Okay? Hopefully my story's a little more upbeat. That's not going to be hard to do, is it? Okay. The name of this story / poem, whatever the fuck you want to call it, is called Here But Not Here. Okay? Here we go. Here but not here. The apocalypse was coming. I heard it humming under the surface of a distracted world, not paying attention, fingers tapping, glass lighting, eyes glazing. Necks down, heads pulled forward, plugged in, connected. So many friends, so much to share. Here, but not here. A light-speed post chamber. Echoes in the air. The pixels are always greener. Sound so much sweeter on the other side of the app. We were warned about this. Being here, but not here. Alone. Together. Amusing ourselves to death. I did not listen. Like everyone else, I became a ghost, watching and listening. Billions of digital souls condemned to purgatory, floating in blue light in perfectly tuned tones, pretending to touch and connect, unable to find the way back to where now matters, where here is a place you can be. We lost it. I lost it. It doesn't matter who or how. The apocalypse came, just the same. The old ways are gone. One morning, in the dark waning, I woke up. I opened my eyes. I turned to look at my wife. In the bed next to me, a shifting mass of pixels. Silent. It, writhed and twisted. Disturbing. Nothing. Here but not here. I reached out to touch. My hand passed through it like nothing was there. Here but not here. Hey, I said, as if willing her back to someone real. No response. Here but not here. I got out of bed, walked down the hallway. Standing outside my son's bedroom, cold, blue light spilled from under the door. The light pulsed from something, writhing, twisting, and moving. My hand floated above the knob. Here, but not here. I left the door closed. Lost. Both of them. I ran from the house into the woods. Days upon days, I wandered and wondered. In the deafening, unamplified, analog noise. Creaking trees leaning, bowing, before Odin's rushing breaths. Wings of birds fluttering, like the leaves. They crash through upward, seeking the open air, gray or blue, wet or dry. Small things that smelled of musk, scurrying in bushes, digging tunnels in the soft loam. Real things, alive and connected, talking and communicating, here, together. I decided to stay and built a small shelter of sticks, grass, mud, and moss, just big enough to cradle in fetal repose my body in earthen utero. Every night I hiked to a rocky ledge and looked down from the forest on the town I ran from. The windows of houses glowed, shifting in blue. Ghostly silhouettes drifted behind the glass. This was my place to remember. Here, but not here. On my 160th day in the forest, I heard howling. Drifting up from the town, I thought, scowling, wolves, coming to drag me out of the wilderness, down to the blue light graveyard of glowing, houses haunted by pixelated phantoms, not rendering to anything real. I ran deeper into the woods, finding refuge in forgotten hunting cabins and vacation homes, fit for kings, not prey. Now I am hiding in an empty house. 3 large wolves sit on the front porch, 2 gray, 1 white, breathing deep, exhausting into the cold, forest air, moist clouds that smell of dog spit, sumac berries, and rotten, unlucky things. There is a patience in their pacing, back and forth across the weathered decking, faded and splintered from too many years, without stain or paint. Are the wolves imagined? Real? I'm not sure I can tell the difference. Does it matter? They have hunted me down again, tracked me here from the last place, another flimsy dwelling with too many ways in. I am getting tired, running from place to place. Hiding, it's only a matter of time, before they claw their way through the walls and doors, keeping them out. I open a window, just a crack. Iron weights bang inside the sashes. Cold air rushes in, conjuring clouds of lead, dust from the weathered, painted sill. Inhaling deeply, I long for memory, loss, and blissful cognitive decline. The wolves lift their noses and whine, pleading to some lupine god for my deliverance. A raven screams down from the top, branches of a pine, its warning of danger sinking, softened by 100 feet of green coniferous blanket. I want to climb the tree like a wild ape, unafraid, wrap myself in sharp green needles, far above the grounded wolves, protected from danger, beneath the harbinger eyes, in those avian orbs I imagine spiraling. Bands of stars and interstellar dust reflected back at me speaking. My ancestors were dinosaurs, the ones who laughed in the face of extinction. You are cut from the same cloth. Don't forget it. So are the wolves. Take nothing for granted. We all have survival baked into our genes. The raven shrieks again, takes to the air, swaying, the the top of the pine waves. Down here on the ground I consider. My options are limited. Fight or escape. Scarred with fleshy hieroglyphs, my skin, a history of battles never won, almost lost. These woods and shelters provide weapons. You just need to know where to look. Knives, dulled, left in kitchen drawers, threaded sections of pipe under black porches, cast iron pots pitted with rust on cold, greasy stoves, hammers, chains, and cans of engine grease in sheds, glass bird feeders, long emptied hanging on gutters, anything and everything to fight the wolves, everything and anything to stab, hit, and lash. Tattered, my clothes, a flag still flying, rippling, in the wind, pledging allegiance to a life, still worth the flesh torn by teeth, blood swallowed by tongues. At what point do the wolves that sustain themselves upon me become me? They are what they eat. I run. Structures and their protections impermanent. Doors and walls only take so much, scratching and clawing over time. Wood, plaster, brick, and stone weaken against non-retractable claws. Distracting the wolves is easy enough. Toss out a window anything to the pack to keep occupied their need to alert, hunt, and pursue. A box of cereal zipped in a canvas duffel bag. Bones filled with dry marrow harvested from a sunken pile of clothes in a stained bed. A caught mouse in a screw-top jar. Stale dog treats from a splintered kitchen drawer. I retreat while the wolves are occupied, slipping quietly out the opposite side of the house, always downwind, tiptoeing into the woods, mindful of the threat of crunching leaves and snapping twigs. My brain races during these flights. Here, but not here. I don't know where I'm going. How long can I keep running and resisting? The wolves just want to take me back down to the valley, to my family. What if it's better to be a digital ghost, haunting the halls of my own home? Here, but not here. There, but not there. I could stop running. My hand slips into my front pocket. I feel the cold, black glass. I take out the phone, look at my reflection. Haggard, starving, feral, alone. How can this be better? I look up from the screen. The wolves have surrounded me. They sit calm, like domestic dogs, watching, mouths open, tongues hanging. They know. I close my eyes, turn my head toward the sky. I feel the warmth of sun on my face. Above me, I hear the wind slipping through pine needles. The flurry of a raven taking flight, its wings beating with disappointment and contempt. A cold wave of blue light washes over me. It feels so good. A shot of morphine in black mirror ice. I open my eyes to a landscape of distortion. I am being dragged on my back by the wolves. They have no shape, definition, only jittery, shifting masses of pixels. The wolves are taking me back to the distracted world, to my family. There, but not there. I am not afraid. Plugged in, connected. So many friends. So much to share. Here, but not here. All right. Ooh, doggy. That was my reading of my story/poem called Here, but Not Here. I think I almost gave that a flawless reading, actually. I was kind of getting into it. So that is my reflection on the struggle I was having with social media way back when in 2019. And to be honest, I'm still having that struggle now. I feel like I spend way too much time on my phone, fucking around on Facebook and Instagram, consuming AI slop like a fucking barnyard hog, eating slop. And it's like one of these things I periodically tell myself, oh, you need to do less of that. You need to spend less time online. You need, and again, this is one of my New Year's resolutions, right? You need to read more, etc., etc. And, you know, I'm trying. I really am. So, but as I was reading that poem, I was sort of thinking to myself, wow, a lot of that still rings true. Right? And I think it rings true for a lot of us. And kind of connecting it back to where I was starting with, now the government, the Trump administration, I believe is taking advantage of the fact that we're all so sucked into this online digital world. We're so constantly exposed to information that seems real, is not real, that we're slowly losing the capacity to know what is truth. We're losing the ability to trust our own eyes. And like, I don't know who said it, but every time I start feeling that fucking way, I head outside into nature, into the woods. I go for a long walk in the forest, and I feel recentered. Like when I'm out there walking with my dog or alone, listening to the wind rip through the pine needles or the birch leaves. I begin to think like I can get away from this digital hellscape that we all occupy. This fucking digital hellscape that is training us to not trust the evidence of our eyes and our ears. So, yeah, that's my poem. Okay. And I don't know anything. But I suspect some of you listening to this might think I'm full of shit. might say to me, why did you have to inject politics into this? And to those of you who would say that, I would say to you, well, I have to inject politics into this because I live in this world. I live in this country. I care about this country. I love this country, and I'm seeing it hijacked and abused by people who want to hurt us, by people who are using social media to manipulate us, by people who are undermining the real social order of our country. And look, I'm not one of these people who has ever thought our country is perfect, right? It's far from it. And unlike the people in the Trump administration, I'm not going to tell you that we don't have an awful, bloody legacy of human rights. We do. But I also believe up until a year ago, we began to make serious progress. And now these people are trying to undo that progress and take us back to what I think is a objectively worse time for lots of people. People of color, gay people, women, like basically anybody who's not a white male. So, yeah, I'm not going to not talk about this stuff. And if you don't like it, don't listen. And if you're somebody listening to this who supports the Trump administration, honestly, I really don't want you as a listener. I just don't care. So, yeah, I'm going to continue to talk about this stuff. I might even continue to talk about it in more stark ways going forward. Because it's hard not to feel like the stakes are rising. And we need as many voices as possible speaking out about what's happening. And, my intention is not to turn this into the very kind of content my story and my comments here are criticizing, right? I'm not going to take sound bites from this podcast and turn them into TikToks or Reels. I'm just going to talk to you, just like I have been for the last 48 minutes, from the heart. Again, if you're a long-time listener of this podcast, you'll know I am a U.S. Army veteran. I served in the military. And at the beginning of my service, I took an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States of America against enemies, foreign and domestic. And there's no other way to say it. I think we have enemies of the U.S. Constitution running our country, domestic enemies. So yeah, I'm going to continue to speak out about it in whatever way that I find appropriate. All right, folks. I think you've probably heard enough from me this week. So what can you do? If you do like the podcast, and I'm not sure how many of you there even are out there anymore, not doing the podcast. I'm going to take a quick diversion, not doing the podcast for almost 2 years. We've lost a significant number of our listeners. I'd say almost 2/3 of them. So if you're here and you're listening to this, I just want to tell you something, right? I am closing my eyes and imagining you sitting here on the podcast studio couch with me. I appreciate you. I appreciate that you're listening to this, and I want to hear from you. Okay? So you can always interact with me on... God, this feels so horribly ironic. On Facebook, on Instagram, you can send me direct messages. Okay, through that platform, you can email me if you want to take heed of the messages in my story/poem and you don't want to use social media. You can email me, softservepodcast@gmail.com. Our Soft Serve Podcast website has a contact form. You can complete that there and say whatever you want. Okay? But, I do appreciate and I do like the interactions on social media as well, despite my poem/story. But, one of the challenges with Facebook and Instagram and all the other fucking platforms is if you don't pay them, they don't promote your shit anyways. So, it is what it is. So if you're listening to this and you like what I'm saying and you like my show, share with a friend. Let them know about it. Okay? That's how we'll grow this thing back up again. Word of mouth. Pass it on like a joint around the campfire. Okay. Well, even though she's not here, I am hearing Stomping Jen's voice in my head saying, "Wrap it up, Sawtooth. Wrap it up, Buster. You're going on and on and on." And that's true. I am going on and on and on. I won't argue with the imaginary Stomping Jen in my head. I can't win an argument with the real Stomping Jen. You think I'm going to win an argument with an imaginary Stomping Jen? No. Not going to happen. She'll even beat me in my imagination. All right, folks. With that said, I'm going to say my sign-off words. Here we go. Let's do it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Bye now.
This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road.